Hello, everyone. Welcome to MD Media. This is a weekly show H panel. Today, we'll be talking about what is now over 6 weeks of humanitarian truce in Tigray since it was first announced by Abiy Ahmed of Ethiopia on March 24th. We'll be assessing where we are in terms of humanitarian aid and related issues. To talk about this, I have with me Dr. Solomon Lescabo, will be joining us shortly, Mercy Akidan, and Merata Abzarabro. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Those who are following us live, please share, like, subscribe so that we get more audience to this material. Okay, so today with that topic, we will start first, as usual, with the weekly question of what stood out for each panelist. I will start with, just let me pull this one in. Okay, I'm trying to get this. Okay, now they're back. So we can start with Miratab. What stood out for you over the past 7 days?
Yeah, thank you, Professor Getachew. Thank you, viewers, and my company here. Um, the first thing that stood out for me was death of General Gabramed Fakadu, commonly known as Wadinacho. Uh, uh, his death circumstances were very suspicious. There are a lot of unknown things regarding his days. And another significant part was the protest by Tagaru at his funeral. It was so surprising for me. Tagaru in Addis Ababa are going through a lot, and they really have braved to show resistance to the treatment of not only General Gabra Medhin, but all the other military arrested and Tagaru in general. Following this protest, of course, we are hearing news that the family has denied mourning at home. People are not allowed to visit his family to comfort them. Uh, and the other thing is, I also heard some protesters, some among the protesters who have been jailed, and this is very concerning now and very sad situation. I believe the days of General Gabramadhan or Wetnecho should be investigated. We have a lot of shady days in the past too, including General Saara. So it's very, very important that the truth be revealed and known for the family, for the whole Tigrayan community, or for humanity in general. Another significant thing that happened last week was the religious conflict that started in Gondar. Uh, uh, Very, very confusing how it started, what led to it. There are a lot of factors, of course, but there are a lot of signs that this was orchestrated by the government and managed by the government too. We have seen Muslims all over the country protesting and mainly denouncing Fano. as a perpetrator of the killings in Gondar, especially. Following that, we have seen churches burned in Warabe, I think. Uh, but the government also surprisingly came up with a documentary blaming TPLF on this one, and making coordination with Al Shabaab and ISIS. Of course, this documentary has faced a lot of protests from every corner. Not anyone bought this one, and I think as of now it is not on the YouTube. They have taken it down, I think, because it was very hard for anyone to accept, especially the Muslim community. I have seen they denounced how the government tried to blame shift to what happened to the Muslims in Gondar and elsewhere. Um, Another thing that stood out for me was uh, the news that some parents in Tigray have been jailed because their children were not going to join the forces. This especially Kibrom from Baitona, an opposition party, when he pointed out the issue became very hot. This issue has been raised multiple times, but of course the government also have given response to this. They have admitted this is wrong. People should not be forced to join the forces, or parents should be jailed. But this have created among Tagaru a lot of back and forth, because some tried to defend the actions, and that didn't give a very good taste for others. So, but the good thing about this is that the government admitted to these wrong practices, and promised to take action. I have heard Professor Kundaya and Ato Getachew Redda speak on this, and they said there will be corrective measures taken to make sure parents are not subjected to any of these kinds of harassments for any reason at all. These are the three things that stood out for me. Thank you.
You are mute. Thank you. Uh, Thank you, Murata. So, speaking about the Major General that was who died this week, we heard from Riot Media today that the family members are uh, prohibited from mourning the dead, and the Republican Guards were at their house today, and this is a very saddening development related to that. Mercier, what stood out for you?
All right. Thank you, Getachew, and thank you, all the panelists here. Three things stood out for me with speaking about the subject that we are talking about. The first one is U.S. embassies, the United States Embassy in Eritrea uh, wrote something in their Twitter page, um, reiterating that the Eritrean government has committed crimes on humanity in Tigray. Uh, and they reiterated the demand for Eritrean troops to pull out of Tigray. So that was really bold, and they are on the ground. They are in Eritrea. They are close to the situation. So if there is any United States entity who knows the situation best, it will be them or the embassy in Addis. So I think that stood out for me. hopefully they would inform both the executive and the legislative branch of the United States about the situation so that the US takes the right measures. So that stood out for me. The second one is this might have been more than a week, but the press secretary of the Ethiopian government, I think his name is Lagasa Tulu. It's known that the Ethiopian government, the federal government, has requested that the Tigray forces pull out of some of the areas in Afar, and the Tigrayan government has responded by pulling out all its forces from Afar. The press secretary, when asked about it, he said that he increased the request or the ultimatum, and even requested that Tigrayan forces pull out of the Tigrayan areas around Afar. So I think it had made it clear that the Ethiopian government is just buying time or trying to or dragging its feet on this issue. There is no intention to allow humanitarian access. There is no intention to let the civil people in Tigray get access to the basic services. The Ethiopian government is only playing tactics here. It's obvious from what the press secretary has said. So that stood out for me too. It's just that the international community, the Tigray government, and others, if they are hoping that the Ethiopian government is in these discussions with a will to bring peace, I think that's a wrong assumption. It can be seen from what the press secretary said that there's no intention, even if the Tigrayan forces pull from wherever the Ethiopian government force or government asks them to pull from. I don't think there will be any. I don't think there is any plan to allow access to basic services and humanitarian aid to Tigray from the federal government's perspective. So I think it should be known that the intention of the federal government or the Abiy administration is to win the war using hunger as a weapon, and also by putting the people of Tigray under siege. All these tactics and discussions are just tactics of buying time, from what I see. The third one that I found to be interesting is the letter of the Tigray government to the United Nations and the African Union. These are interesting. I think they are late, but as they say, better late than never. They have requested that the Eritrean troops pull out of Tigray. They are strong statements, but I think they could have been stronger, considering that genocide has been committed, and the fact that the Tigray the Tigray parliament has put out what do you call the promulgation saying that what happened in Tigray or what the Ethiopian army and the Eritrean army did in Tigray is a genocide. I think the Tigray government should ask both the UN and the African Union that the committers of the crime should be put to justice and held accountable. But it's a good start, I believe, but it can be done better. So those are the three things that stood out for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mercy. Dr. Solomon, welcome. I know you are traveling. So what stood out for you over the past 7 days?
Thank you for having me, and I'm glad to join my peers here, my compatriots. I concur with the statements and reflections on both the tragic outcomes and some of the misgivings around detention of parents who, for one or another reason, the cadres felt that they have to detain the parents or relatives. And also my condolences to the family of Woodnacho and others who are suffering same. And I concur with the others, but I just want to highlight from domestic side, the government of Tigray seemed to recognize all its efforts, all the good faith and goodwill it tried to put for the process of peace, and particularly the cessation of hostility, or Abiy's version truce, that was for naught, that the other party was not genuine. Neither were the interlocutors or mediators to back up the promise in the guarantee the guarantee they promised. They seem to realize late that's exactly what's happening. It's unfortunate. Another domestic version is from the regime, and particularly from the Amhara and ultra-nationalists' insidious effort to deny Tigray's historical, cultural heritages, be it on religious, other cultural or social assets, and even political and geographical boundaries, which they did through an insidious effort by changing language and in some cases maps of international organizations like UN's OCHA, by putting parts of Tigray, currently under occupation of Eritrea and the Amhara regime, by placing those Tigray places in Amhara region. Even though they tried to withdraw, but this was an insidious effort that they did. On international arena, I would like to piggyback on what Marcia said. The letter that was sent to AU and United Nations, and the disappointment from our part, from Tigray part. This is not the first time that the international community was put on notice on what's happening on the ground and the frustrations the government of Tigray and the people of Tigray keep feeling because the international community has failed to guarantee any agreement or understanding, and was to appease the Abiy region. You have seen how the world, meaning the Western Hemisphere, and even the UN, including Guterres himself, traveled to Ukraine and tried to facilitate the escape route of civilians held in Mariupol and other humanitarian assistance that folks in Ukraine deserve. But unfortunately, not only couldn't care a fraction of that and show such care towards Tigray, but when the government of Tigray put him on notice that things are only getting worse and deteriorating, and it's difficult to repair, he even failed to recognize that and react on that. That's a disappointment that continues to that we continue to witness from the international community, from never mind the EU, it has never been there, but from the hypocrites of the UN, particularly Guterres and his cheerleaders. It's very disappointing. I'm also disappointed by my own government here, the US government, Secretary Blinken, and others, seniors, officials of the US government, who didn't show a fraction of what they have shown Ukraine.
Great, thank you, Dr. Solomon. We will jump into the topic. Today's topic is assessing over 6 weeks of humanitarian truce in Tigray. Before we jump into that, I just want to do some shout outs. First is Mike Hagos, who is the first actually to join as a member of UMD Media's support group to support what we do here at the media. And just very close, actually, this idea came from Peace for All. So on YouTube, there is a membership, three category of memberships, three ways of supporting the MD media. So Mike Hagos, thank you, and Peace for All, thank you for your support. So today, the topic we have is on March 24th, Abiy Ahmed, as you mentioned, came out and said there is a humanitarian truce. And what we know about that, actually, if we were to cover the last 19 months since November 4th, the war started on November 4th, 2020. And then November 28th, Ethiopia declared victory by controlling Magala. And then on June 28, 2021, Magala was taken back by Tigray Defense Forces. That time, Abiy left Tigray under siege, under communication, humanitarian, transport, financial, economic siege or blockade. And December 14th, that year, 2021, was the last time humanitarian aid trucks reached Tigray. Then we know, we have discussed it on UMD Media, that December 19, 2021, Debretsion, president of Tigray, wrote a letter to the UN Secretary General on unilateral ceasefire. But what was publicized a lot was March 24th, 2022, the humanitarian truce declared by Abiy Ahmed. Then it was after December 14, 2021, the first time aid trucks arrived in Tigray was April 1st. So what we are doing today is what the panelists think about this humanitarian truce since March 24 and how they see the performance. So we start now with Mercier. Mercier, what is your assessment of what has happened over the past 6 weeks since the humanitarian truce was declared on March 24, 2022? Mercier.
So when we look at the forces in the war on Tigray, the forces that are partnering, it will be the Eritrean government, the Amhara expansionist forces, and also Abiy Ahmed's administration. When we see the three of them, there is one thing they have in common, that is that they are determined to see the extermination of the people of Tigray. And they are ill-bent to make sure that happens. So this truce declaration by Abiy administration came not as a result of an interest for a willingness to allow humanitarian access, but it came because what's called the HR 66 in the United States legislative body it was under consideration. So that was an effort to kind of stop that process of the promulgation of the HR 666. That was a quick declaration by Abiy's administration. None of us believed, I can say none of us, most of us did not believe, since we know that administration and the forces that are partnering have no intention whatsoever to allow humanitarian aid or basic services to the people of Tigray. Whether it's for tactical reasons or it's going to be very difficult that even the Tigray government believed that the Abiy and his allies are willing to allow humanitarian access, but the Tigray government also declared cessation of hostilities agreement. When you really think about it, every action that the Abiy administration is doing is trying to deter any activity, even by other bodies, by international bodies, to help the people of Tigray. The question of saving lives, the question of allowing people to get basic services, and most importantly, the question of food and health supplies should not have been a political issue. It's a humanitarian issue. The world should have forced whoever is out there to deter any activity that is done to get these services to the people of Tigray. But the world has failed the people of Tigray. Today, it's estimated that around 800 children die out of either hunger or health, or a lack of access to health facilities and health supplies. This is a tragic situation. I have never thought I will see such a situation in the 21st century. It's a very sad thing. But the truce was declared by our administration just to curb the process of the HR 66 that has passed to the next level now, the next stage. But the Ethiopian government is not only dragging its feet, but it's doing whatever it can not to allow any force, any body to enable the people of Tigray to have access to basic foods. This should have not been a political issue. This should have not been put as a bargaining tool, but that's what the Ethiopian government is using. From my perspective, Abiy Ahmed and Isaias Afwerki should be put in front of justice. They should be held accountable for the lives lost so far. I don't see any chance for peace with them. So the people of Tigray will have to fight and make sure these people face justice. The Tigray government should stop this naive effort to make peace with those people who will never be interested in making peace with the people of Tigray, and do the necessary actions to put these people in front of justice and hold them accountable. The international world has to clearly declare that genocide has happened in Tigray, and the committers of the genocide, the perpetrators of the genocide, should be put in front of justice and should be held accountable. That's what I think should happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Marce. I think the first time, at least from my perspective, the first time we heard about the 100 trucks a day requirement was back in July last year. That's the earliest I found, but it could be even earlier than that. So July last year, The OCHA, the Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, a UN organization, they said 100 trucks a day is required at minimum to sustain life or to prevent catastrophe in Tigray. Even if we zoom in into what happened after the humanitarian truce, this is what we see. This is the number of trucks in blue, the number of trucks that reached Tigray, including today. I think the UN World Food Program announced today that 16 trucks arrived in during this week. So today is Friday, and every day 100 trucks are required, but this week only 16 trucks arrived in the in Makala. So what is your take of this assessment and where we are, Meratab?
Thank you. I share Mercy's assessment also. Um, from the beginning, we have seen it didn't start off well because how the announcements came about, especially about the truce, was the Abiy government took even advantage of making those announcements. I believe the announcements were supposed to be made simultaneously, according to the information that came out later. Uh, but they had to take a unilateral action and announce it. Uh, and the Tigray government had to follow with its own announcement almost, which made it look like they are just following the actions of the Ethiopian government. So, as Mercy clearly said, you can't trust Abiy. We have seen him time and again fail his promises, and especially Tagaru. None of us have expected that he will live up to his promises. And as expected, uh, after he announced the government of the Ethiopia announced the truce on March 24th, they have done nothing for almost a week until March 31st. As you showed us on the table, the first convoy of trucks that left to Maqala, Tigray, was on April the 1st, a week after the announcement of the truce. And there was no even reason that was given for the delay. We are talking about hungry people here. This is essential food for survival of children, pregnant mothers, elderly people, and medicine and fuel to get those aids to the places that are needed. So even after the truce, it took the Abiy government to deliver the first convoy a week. Uh, After December 15 until April 20, the total, according to the statement of the government of Tigray, which was released on April 30, I think, only 86 trucks out of 12,700 that were needed, starting from the last time the people of Tigray got aid, which is only 4% of it until April 20. Total trucks that got in so far, even after the truce, is 186. As you have shown, the UN OCHA have declared 100 trucks are needed every day to cover the need in Tigray. So the Abiy government have been making excuses clearly to in an effort to delay the aid. Sometimes they don't even need a reason to do so, but every time the government of Tigray complied with some requirements, especially in reference to pulling out of parts of Afar, the government of Ethiopia comes up with more demands and more desires. So they have been making excuses at every turn not to deliver aid. On the other hand, the government of Tigray, they have been making statements, especially recently, very strong statements to the UN leader Antonio Guterres. As Dr. Solomon said, he never even acknowledged that letter. They also sent letters to the AU. The first letter to Antonio Guterres focuses on the danger of disintegration because of the inaction of the United Nations or the general international community. The other letter that was sent to the AU, which focuses the role of the Eritrean government in the Tigray genocide and how it is very important to deal with the Eritrean government to make sure they don't involve or they are removed from involvement in Ethiopian affairs. And those statements were very strong. They were late. They should have made this kind of strong statements earlier because there was no aid for the whole time since December 15. On the other hand, the international community's response has been very disappointing, especially the US, who was the prime negotiating party or negotiator between Abiy and the government of Tigray. Their response was kind of congratulatory to the few trucks that got into Tigray. For example, Mr. Antony Blinken on April 29th, he welcomed the actions taken to lay ground for peace. That's how he described it. And Mr. Ned Price, following him on the statement of Antony Blinken, he said, encouraging delivery of very necessary food items to Tigray or to northern Ethiopia. On the other hand, their embassy in Addis Ababa has been doing business as usual, going to programs, opening some meeting with officials, like there is no war or genocide that's happening, like there is no siege that's happening in the Tigray region. And yesterday they met with Redwan Hussein, and the ambassador said they talked about full ceasefire, which is completely impossible considering the situation we are in. On the other hand, the international aid agencies, especially the US aid agency, opposite to how the government of the US described the situation in Tigray as catastrophic, and they kind of almost blamed the Ethiopian authorities for the blockade because they are specifically asking for Ethiopian authorities to facilitate access. They said the authorities at all levels. Another organization, humanitarian organization that was playing part was the WFP, especially WFP Ethiopia. We have seen them making big news about delivery of 20, 16 or 40 trucks, but we never see them making noises when there was no aid or when they were denied access to deliver aid to Tigray. So this is a form of complicity to the government of Ethiopia by making breaking news for little to nothing delivery of aid, while keeping silent when the aid that is very necessary is denied to go to Tigray. I think that's all I can say on the truce. Thank you.
Thank you, Marata. And Dr. Solomon, I just want to come to you with the you have been following closely the numbers, making even some calculations. You are privy also to the need, to the nutritional need as well, and so on. And we know for a fact that the road that is usually talked about, the Afar, Abala, Magala road, is not the only road to Tigray. We know from Gondar here on the left side, there are two roads that function well, but are blocked, and that could lead to central Tigray. And then there is another one that goes from Desi, Waldia, and to Magala. Nobody is talking about them. And maybe you can touch on that as well, including your assessment of how you see the period since the truce, the humanitarian truce on March 24th.
Sure. Thank you. On the humanitarian, I think many points my panelists here have addressed them. There are few that I would like to highlight and some I would like to point out. First, on the numbers. So on the numbers, there are different estimates that were provided during last summer, July. The assessment was there were about 100 trucks that were needed over time because of the number of people who needed assistance and for the stage of the type of assistance they needed because they were not provide any assistance for months. That number was up to 300 trucks a day. But most importantly, when the cessation of hostility truce were agreed upon or an understanding was created, there was clear numbers, expectations, clear numbers that were on the table, that there will be 300 trucks a day consecutively for 37 days that were supposed to be delivered. Food and food-related items, including fuel. So that would bring it to 11,100 trucks. How many were delivered? 187. So close to 11,000 worth of food truck has not been delivered. And that amount of food assistance has been already appropriated, meaning the US government, the European Union, the United Nations, either through multilateral or bilateral agencies have made them available within Ethiopia. So those resources are already there. If they are not in around Addis or any of the locations that are designated for holding reserve, they are on their way from Djibouti. So by keeping this food aid, by keeping this food assistance and medicine, not only has denied the people of Tigray what they need to survive, but the Abiy regime has found it convenient to profit from this adventure. So with this measure, he is achieving two things. He is starving the people of Tigray, to subjugate, to kneel them down, but at the same time is profiting from the resources that are available that were aimed and designated for Tigray. What those numbers mean is for every 100 truck that were supposed to be delivered to Tigray, only 2 were delivered. 98 trucks are missing, or 2 people are fed, 98 people are going hungry. That's what it means. So Abiy, by designing such extractive coercive, and mean fascistic way not only is hurting, jeopardizing the people of Tigray, but is using these resources to buy political clout, to raise funds to continue wage the war. So it's prudent on us, it's prudent on the government of Tigray to see such shenanigan, such extortion, and not be part of such device. On the framework, it looks like the readiness and willingness of the government of Tigray to pave the path towards peace through cessation of hostility. And unwittingly twined humanitarian assistance in this process. Not only peace was not achieved, not only cessation of hostility was not respected, but was abused to continue the war and the starvation of the people of Tigray, but also profiting Abiy to continue to stay in power, buy more political clout, buy more support, give him space to do all the diplomatic campaign and inroads into Europe and the US. So we have been hurting by this agreement. We have paid huge price because of this wrong assumption and wrong agreement that we went in. Not only we got nothing out of it, but we lost a lot of things from this particular agreement. The government of Tigray lately seems to understand that. They seem to be disappointed from the expressions and some of the statements they expressed through the letter to the UN and some of the tweets by their officials. And it's unfortunate that many of us have pointed out this would result, but it seems that's the development. What should we do? What should the government of Tigray do? Well, it has to rely on itself. It has to rely on its own resources. Last December 2020, when it was on a verge of elimination, extermination, the Tigray Defense Forces, through the care support of the people of Tigray, they fought very hard, survived it, and kept beat to rise and beat all the forces north and south, east and west that campaigned on Tigray, that pillaged Tigray. It relied on the agricultural products, it relied on the human resources, it relied on the will to fight of the people of Tigray. That's what we had then, that's what we have now. It's a very unfortunate development that the international community, particularly the US and Europe, are not giving the attention and the weight they should put on this particular war. We need to continue in the particularly in the international community and the diaspora to shame them. Yes, the people of Ukraine need support and help because of a number of reasons that we have explained before. But this is taxpayers' money. The US and Europe have both moral and legal duty, because we are citizens, we are taxpayers, that our money should fairly go to those in need. The people of Ukraine need, but the need in Tigray is much greater. So we should continue not only on humanitarian assistance, but also on the necessary political support that the government of the people of Tigray need to ensure their survival, to ensure their autonomy and right to self-governance. one of the tragedy that we saw over the last months or so is how the US government, particularly the State Department, come to rescue in response to the refugee crisis in Ukraine. They have established TPS, temporary protective status, right away. They are in the process of considering what they call sponsorship program. If they have done that in 24 hours for Ukraine, that has taken them more than a year to do similar for Tigray, and they should be ashamed for not giving serious consideration and priority to accord the same rights and privileges for refugees and for those persecuted by Abiy regime. And we will keep fighting for that, regardless of how the State Department have dealt with the government of Tigray and its representatives, whether the government of Tigray mishandled this or not. People of Tigray need our support. Their voice needs to be heard. The humanitarian assistance needs to be delivered. We will, with the people of Tigray, while keeping fighting, survive and to remove all forces from Tigray. We will also continue to appeal and pressure and demand from the international community what they deserve. It's very unfortunate that what has happened about almost 50 years ago is now being repeated. The people of Tigray didn't have anyone to support them to in their dire need, and to the end, they fought hard and survived and helped the rest of Ethiopia remove a brutal regime. They didn't get help from anyone then. Now we are facing much more serious political environment, but we'll survive because it's a just war, because we are fighting for independence, because we are fighting for self-governance, and we are fighting, most importantly, for survival. So it has been a very disappointing several weeks, very disappointing from the international community. We learned very hard lessons, how much faith we put. It's very important that for the government of Tigray to recognize respecting international community, respecting international law and order is paramount. But it's no substitute. It's by no means a substitute that will guarantee your survival. You have an absolute responsibility and responsibility of your own domain. You cannot entrust the life and security of the people of Tigray at the hands of international community. You can't. An international community that's so biased, an international community that's more European, Caucasian, white, and has so many biased structures in its system. So I think we need to stop playing naive here. We shouldn't violate any international law and order. We shouldn't undermine anybody's human rights, including our own citizens, which Marat alluded earlier. We should be absolutely respecting, because we have a value system that respects that. But we are the only responsible body that can assert, demand, and ensure our own survival and our own rights. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Solomon. I think that takes us to the final thoughts, parting thoughts from each one of you. Meratab, what is your final thoughts? You can reflect on what has been said so far as well, but you can bring it with your final thoughts for the day. Meratab.
Yeah, thank you again. On final thought, I think the failure of the international organizations, which seem to be happy that they think that the territorial integrity of Ethiopia is kept together, which I think is very temporary, and even the situation which looks like peace is very fragile, and the obsession to keep the country together is bringing the opposite result, because on one hand, it's kind of they are interfering in the internal affair of the country, because this country has two strong political views. One which wants to keep a very strong unity, and on the other side, which wants to have autonomy, even if with that unity, or even they can go up to secession. So on one hand, they are kind of siding to one political ideology in the internal affairs of the country. On the other hand, this effort to keep it together by force or by any means is going to bring more bloodshed. So I think the international community have to really stop and think and focus on solving the real problems than focusing on what advances their interest, because the whole point of keeping this country together is advancing their interests in different cases. So I believe that hyper focus on keeping the country together is bringing more problems than solutions. They have to be creative and try to listen to all sides instead of advancing only their interests, because even their interests is not going to be protected with the way they are pushing this so-called peace process, because we all know there is no peace now, and the seemingly peaceful situation can fall anytime, and if it falls, it's going to be very dangerous, and the disintegration will be very violent. So I believe very a practical solution should come from the international community instead of pushing for this territorial integrity of Ethiopia. Thank you.
Thank you, Meratab. Final thoughts, Mercy? I can't hear you, Mercy. Can you fix that?
Yeah, sorry for that. Thank you, Getachew. So I would like to say a couple of things. The first one being, I would like to summarize what we discussed here. And then I would like to say a couple of things about what my brother Meratab said. So first, I think what I'm gathering from our discussion today is that in this effort to create a peaceful path, the partners that should play are not in it with a goodwill. And most importantly, the key player, Abiy Ahmed, is determined to see the destruction of the Tigray nation, and his partner Isaias Afwerki is also mentoring him in doing such a thing. So these two people, I don't think they can be partners in creating peace in the Horn of Africa. If they are allowed to rule, they will be producing more conflicts. They will be producing more problems and economic, political, and social problems. So it will be the responsibility of the people in the Horn of Africa to make sure these two people are held accountable first for the crimes they committed, but also we have to remove them from the power they have today. Otherwise, we will see more bloodshed, more economical turmoils, and more social problems. So this peace, truce, as they call it, or a cessation of hostilities, is not there at all. It has been spoken about, but in practice, it's not there on the ground. The so-called humanitarian aid, as Dr. Solomon has provided the statistics, it's just 2% of what's needed, less than 2%, as a matter of fact. So I think the people of Tigray will have to resort to fighting back and putting these two criminals to justice. Having said that, Mehret touched a couple of points about the aspiration of the people of Tigray specifically, and how that is being handled by the U.S. And the international community, and including the Tigray government or the party that's ruling the Tigray today. I think all of them are trying to muffle the interest of the people, the aspirations of the people, and trying to force the continuation of the Ethiopian empire by whatever cost. As we have seen in the past, the Ethiopian empire has been in conflicts, wars, civil wars, because it's very difficult to maintain. There has been a lot of discussion and studies conducted on how to convert this empire into a republic. There were a lot of efforts, and none of them has been fruitful. The fact of the matter is that this empire is a collection of many nations who have different social psyches and social structure. It's not only the Horn, the Ethiopian empire. The other thing we got to think about is the Eritrean state by itself. Isaias Afwerki has been producing conflicts and wars and problems in the world, and most importantly in the Horn of Africa. So I think the aspirations of the people have to be looked into, and especially the Tigray government and the political forces in Tigray should not try to curb the aspirations of the people of Tigray. And the international community has to stop this urban legend that by keeping the territorial integrity of Ethiopia, that peace may come. There will not be peace if we keep Ethiopia the way it is today. There will not be. It's almost guaranteed. There has not been peace, and there will not be, because, as I said, the people have different psyches, different social structure, and different aspirations too. Also, the Tigray government it looks like it has succumbed to the pressure from the West, and more specifically from the United States, and is working in tandem with the U.S. and Abiy administration to curb the aspiration of the people of Tigray. That's not acceptable. The people of Tigray have their own aspirations. They will fight for them, and we'll make sure they are realized. What I see coming is the Horn of Africa being reconfigured. If we need peace in the Horn, we have to see that these people that are divided between borders will have to come together. Also, the aspiration of these people will have to be left to them, not to international powers or political elite negotiations. So with that said, my concern today is that even the party that's ruling the Tigray government has succumbed to the pressure by US and the federal government, and is working in tandem with them to curb the aspiration of the Tigray people. And I don't think that's acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mercier. Dr. Solomon, the final word for today is from you final thoughts.
Thank you. Most of my thoughts have been already shared and expressed by Mahratab and Mercier, which makes my job easier, or in a way difficult, that I would have very little to say. So I would piggyback on what Mercier said. Um, the argument to place more weight, pressure, and demand on the government of Tigray and the people of Tigray is to, under the guise or excuse of protecting Ethiopia. So that has been the expressed objective of political and security objective of US and Europe. So let's assume that's a rational demand. Let's for a second assume that's a rational demand. Asking someone to break a fight between two cops or armed or gangs, while at the same time tying legs, feet, arms of the person you are trying to help break the fight is just ridiculous. Just outrageous. By starving the people of Tigray, by denying medicine, by denying access to their own savings in the bank, by denying access to support from their own kins from the diaspora, by denying access to any productive inputs. By the way, something I forgot to mention, besides food assistance, 90% of the people of Tigray, 90% of their need, food need, caloric need, is met by crops they grow within Tigray. Food assistance has been always less than 10%. But by denying them market, by denying them fertilizers and their capacity to produce and be self-sufficient, but at the same time putting the burden and responsibility of protecting the rest of the country is just outrageous. It's absurd. The people of Tigray have to free the shackles of the burden they have been put. No one should demand anything more from Tigray. And the people of Tigray should not put up with this anymore. Anyone working for the government, for the people of Tigray, or on behalf of the government, the people of Tigray, need to recognize the people of Tigray are facing the war. They have nothing to offer. They have nothing to offer to the rest of Ethiopia or the Horn of Africa. They have done enough. Now, the first thing they need to do and they want to do is to be able to feed themselves, protect themselves, and secure their life and their livelihood. The rest of responsibility of maintaining peace and order, whether Ethiopia or the rest of Horn of Africa, is secondary to their survival. If the international community is serious, if the US is serious, first needs to ensure that the people of Tigray have the mechanisms to be able to feed themselves, to govern themselves. That's the first line of order the US should provide, like it's doing with Ukraine. Anyone, like Mercedes said, is not going to may slow it down and would have repercussions, serious repercussions and ramifications. But no one can put down the aspirations of the people of Tigray if their aspiration and demand is independent Tigray. No one could put that. You can give them candies, you can offer them something to abandon their aspiration, but that responsibility doesn't lie within the people of Tigray. That responsibility rests with the international community, with the US, with the rest of Ethiopia. They cannot shackle us, they cannot chain us and demand we live together. That's outrageous. So there is a lot the international community can do to place pressure on the Abiy regime if they want peace, to give room, space, and venting by providing power, communication, access to the cash, releasing Tigrayans to operate their businesses within the rest of Ethiopia, for them to live peacefully like any citizen, and for the fertilizers to go, for the seeds to go. These are the first things. If they want, you cannot force marriage. You can't have the beating spouse, a domestic violence, and demand that they live together. You can't. So I hope all parties that have a stake and say in this process come to this realization and facilitate. We all want peace, but the mechanisms, the incentives have to be there in place for peace to reign in the region. And one positive thing that we saw over the last few days were the celebration of Easter and Eid in Tigray, and in others who wished peace in the rest of the world. We hope that would come into fruition, and next year that we will be able to celebrate Easter and Eid in Tigray. Thank you.
Thank you, panelists, Dr. Solomon Masgabo, Mercy Akidan, and Mehret Abzarabok. That was what we have for today for the H panel, talking about the Horn of Africa. We'll be back with the H panel next week on the subject of reimagining the Horn of Africa. So we'll be bringing back panelists who'll be talking about Ethiopia, Oromia, Tigray, Eritrea, Sudan, and Somalia, and tune in to the H panel next week. Thank you, panelists. And before we sign off for today, I have a couple of announcements to make. The first is tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll be talking about in Tigrinya. ሁሉ ኩነታት ትግራይ እንታይ ካበይ ናበይ ብኸመይ ምስ ሲሳይ ተኽሉ ላይቭ ክንመፂና ሲሳይ ተኽሉ ሁሉ ኩነታት ትግራይ እንታይ ካበይ ናበይ ብኸመይ. And then on Monday, that is 2 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll be talking about the 4 ongoing wars in Ethiopia. According to Professor Shettle Trombold's recent publication that actually just came out this week, there are 4 ongoing wars in Ethiopia right now, and I'll be speaking with the author of the paper, Shettle Trombold, live at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. That is on May 9th, Monday. So tune in for that as well. And that was it from us today on the H panel and on UMD Media. We have been live on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, and those who have followed us, thank you so much. And I would like to shout out again for Mike Hagos and Peace for All, who have joined UMD Media's YouTube channel as members, supporting the work we do every month. And thank you so much, and I hope others will join as well. Bye for now. See you tomorrow.